Hey everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today I am back with another Boys of Tommen vlog. I've been vlogging all these books because they're just so amazing. I started off with, obviously Finding 13, Keeping 13 as like, is it worth the hype? And then it definitely was. And I've just vlogged every book ever since. So now I'm finally going to be trying to catch up because I have been delayed in getting to the last two books. I think it was last month to just do Taming 7. So if you're interested, check that out. I will have these all in my vlog playlist anyways. But now I am getting to releasing 10, which I was very nervous about because I was so pissed with Lizzie and Taming 7. But I know she's was going to have a very traumatic kind of tale, and there's going to be a lot to her book. So I was very excited but nervous to get into this one. This one, I believe there's another one after this, if I'm right. I can't remember. That's continuing her and Hugh's romance. So already this is much thicker than Taming 7, at least it seems like it is. So I feel like we're going to actually get so much more of a story than we got with Gypsy's, which is what I was upset about. But anyways, before I just dive in and start rambling, let's go ahead and get started with this vlog because I did already start this, and let's get going here. Okay guys, so Boys of Tommen is very special to me. I pretty much cry in every single book. It breaks me. These characters mean so much. And now I am finally at releasing 10, which has a lot of drama around it because there are a lot of trigger warnings. And already I'm about 30% through, and we are mostly dealing with Lizzie and Hugh when they are children at this point. And so it starts off with her at like 3 years old. And I think she's 10 or 11 right now, but I keep getting confused because I'll look at the years and I'm like, she's got to be only this old, but they are cursing and saying they're not talking like 10-year-olds. So that's kind of what's throwing me off a little bit of the actual timeline because it doesn't feel like that. But in this, we have Lizzie, and after the previous book, I was infuriated with her, how she treated Gypsy. We know that after what Gypsy went through, he didn't need to be treated like that from her. And even when she finds out what happened to him with his stepbrother, Mark, she still was like against him. Her and Claire's friendship kind of just ended and like fell apart at the end of that book. And there was a lot of reveals about what happened with Gypsy and his stepbrother and how he was abused. We know her older sister had killed herself, and she blamed Mark, but like basically blamed Gypsy and put all her hatred on Gypsy. So there was a lot of unresolved conflict and stuff going on with her and Gypsy at the end of his book that I just felt needed more time. But I'm guessing that's what we're going to lead to in this. But I am 30% through, and we are still at childhood age, so we're not even getting to that part. So I have no idea how long her story is going to be because this is like over 700 pages. And again, the writing is very small. So it is very long. And I think there is a second part. So basically, I don't want to go too deep into like the beginning parts. I'll just kind of sum up because it is very dark. And I think you should definitely go in prepared for that. I know that you are going to be reading about child assault, about pedophilia, like SA. It is very dark because in this, we start out at 3 years old. She had issues like talking. They were having her go to specialists. She has rages. And then finally at 4, she finally does start talking. She's very smart, but she does have a lot of issues. And you kind of find out that her father's her grandfather, had like killed himself because I think he was schizophrenic and heard voices and stuff. And he also has like a crazy sister that tried to like kidnap her at one point and kind of randomly shows up trying to get to her throughout this as she's a child. And she thinks it's all in her head, that she's crazy because everybody thinks she's crazy. and she hears voices, so it's definitely seems like she has a lot of that. It's genetic coming down the line. It's coming to her, and so it's very hard. Her mother has had like suffered from cancer, and is just going, so this family is just going through it. I gotta say, like, I really don't like her sister. Her sister treats her like shit and is like embarrassed by her issues and all of that stuff. And then her sister is dating Mark and brings Mark into the picture. And Mark starts to assault Lizzie at a very young age. I think she was like 4 or 5. I can't remember. But he started like, oh yeah, you don't want to be sick like your mother, right? Like you need this kind of medicine. This will make you never be sick, or this will heal you. And it's his way of manipulating this young child into touching him and taking her clothes off. He would take pictures of her, and then aggressively got worse as she's growing up. So he has basically been assaulting her for years. And her she's like walked in her sister with getting brutally having sex with Mark too. So Mark is just a fucking monster, because we already know he assaulted Gypsy from that book. Sorry, spoiler warning. A little late. But like, now you see why Lizzie is so damaged. And I think they said she has early onset bipolar disorder, maybe like some personality disorders. She has depression issues. She hears voices, and then now she's kind of being assaulted. She's on medication. And so that's kind of what's going on in Lizzie's life. And she becomes friends with Hugh at a really young age, and they become really close. They like crush on each other. They're like childhood, like friends to lovers type of situation here. Obviously, they're still really young in this. I was so confused with what the age is, because they are definitely not talking. They don't read like they're this young, but I think it was started out in 91, and I think she was 3, and now at the current time it's 1998. So I think she's like only like 10 years old or something. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell with the way she's writing them. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at right now. I don't want to go too deep into kind of the setup here, but basically Mark's a monster. He's assaulting Lizzie. He's horrible. And, Hugh senses there's something wrong with this guy. We also got to see the scene from Hugh's perspective of when Gypsy's, father drowns trying to like save him and his sister. And like Mark was just sitting there doing nothing, like totally unfazed by it. So Hugh just always knows there's something wrong with this guy, and he wants to protect Lizzie from him. And Mark's just a monster. So there we go. All right. I have to get back to work because I was just taking a quick break to do this check-in real quick. And I will follow back up with you guys once I get a little bit further. Hey guys, so I am back with my next check-in here. I am already about like 60-something% through the book. I was able to work from home today, so I was able to kind of listen more than usual, annotating a little bit as I go, but there hasn't been a ton for me to comment on except for the super depressing parts, which there are a lot of them in this. My cat's meowing out here now. What, Tootsie? Okay, sorry about that. My cat really wanted attention and in the house to eat, so I had to go put him in real quick. So anyways, back to this. I am about 65% through. Like I said, I was able to listen to it a lot more. There is a bunch of, it's just pure depression in this book. There's not a lot good going on. I will say the evolution of their relationship is very sweet and beautiful. Hugh is Just such a sweet, like, book boyfriend material. I mean, they start as friends. They eventually have, like, their first kiss. I mean, they're really young when this all happens. But and then they eventually do become boyfriend and girlfriend. So all that's like really sweet and not bad at all. What really is hard is watching, we have a lot of mental health rep in this because, Lizzie does suffer from bipolar and she has very big depressions that she deals with. She has a lot of PTSD because she was assaulted and groomed and conditioned and brutalized by her sister's older boyfriend or her boyfriend, whatever. And so she has a lot of issues and she goes into fits and, doesn't have the best impulse control. And so Hugh is just amazing through all this. He's always there for her. He really excuse me. He really steps up and he's like her support system. Her older sister doesn't really do anything to help her. It's always like, oh, she always has bad dreams when Lizzie thinks she's crazy. Everybody tells her she's crazy. So when she constantly has these dreams of this monster visiting her every night, it's her mind's way of protecting her. It isn't a dream. It's Mark visiting her every night and brutalizing her every night. And so, she has these dreams. She has this woman that's stalking her that Hugh has seen too. And so nobody ever really believes her on anything. And so she feels crazy. And so Hugh has a lot to deal with because they are very young, but he would go over there every day, kind of put things at risk to take care of her, to be there for her. He is just so devoted to her. That said, that's really hard for him to have to deal with, but he really loves her. And also, Lizzie really loves him and she tries to support him. She does have her good moments, but, it does feel like she is dependent on him and a little too dependent. But it is because of what her life is like. Her mom continuously is getting cancer back at certain points. Her father just views her crazy and looks down on her. Her sister isn't really there for her. And then she's getting assaulted every night. So this is pretty dark. It's pretty depressing. So if we finally do get to the point where the sister did find out about... Okay, the cats are obviously just being little shits because that other cat, Lily, was just tearing into the window screen behind me to get attention. Anyways, they don't want me to do this check-in. So we finally get to the point where her older sister had walked in on him and Gypsy, and she basically hears them in a huge fight, and she's like, "You raped him, you attacked him, you're a pedophile, like, I saw you," And she explains it was Gypsy and him attacking Gypsy and how he's a child and he's your stepbrother. And so Lizzie hears this. And at first I was like, what the fuck? So she knew and she still hated him. And so I was really angry because, that's the big reveal that his friends find out about what happened to him at the end. And she still wouldn't be understanding or believing of it. And so I really hated her at the end of Taming 7. But as we get further in this book, you get to see the grooming and the threats and the stuff that Mark did with her. Because once that happens with her sister, she realizes, like, oh, the monster is real and it's Mark. Like, her mind finally, like, accepted it. And then her sister finds out about her assaults. And, like, Mark kind of, like, locks them up for days and is, like, threatening them. And it's just a whole scene. And so it's a lot. And her sister gives her a letter and she's like, here, give this to Gypsy. No matter what happens to me, give this to Gypsy. He'll help. And so that's where her issues come from, is she does give the letter to Gypsy, and he doesn't step up, but he's a kid. He's a child and he's scared of Mark. But so she basically puts all her anger onto him, like, because after her sister kills herself, she really wanted Gipsy to help her, and that's when she gives him the note, and she's trying to lean on him, and he doesn't stand up, and like, because she accuses Mark in front of everybody at the funeral, kind of just loses it. And it causes a huge divide between all these families. And, so ever since that moment, she blames him. But what also made it kind of more understandable, and I really felt for her, and I didn't hate her as much anymore, is you see these constant little like flashbacks of the way Mark would let her know, like, this is Gipsy's fault. The reason your sister's dead is because of Gipsy. He's like, and she was fighting that, trying to fight what he's saying. But he's like, if you tell anybody anything, he's like, your little lover boy is going to end up just like your sister. And so he's threatening her boyfriend, who's the only person she has by her side, who believes her, who's standing by her. So she's just very alone. Sorry, this book is getting heavy. So she's just very alone and, going through a lot. And so now she is enemies with Gipsy, doesn't want his friends being friends with Gipsy. That's the kind of, he's starting to see the deterioration of her, because now she hates Gipsy and is like kind of secluding herself from her friends. She does a lot of self-harm in this too, and he's always tried to step in to get her so she's not cutting herself. But she's doing that more often, getting drugged more. And so this is just a very depressing book. So that's kind of where I'm at so far. It's a lot. It's very depressing. And I don't know, maybe I need to take a break for the rest of the day and read something a little lighter. But I do kind of want to get this done too. So I don't know. We'll see where we're at. I'm planning on doing that craftathon that Jen from the Book Refuge is doing. I don't craft, so I got like a paint by numbers thing, and so I'm going to try that. Maybe I'll show some footage in this vlog if I end up getting anything done. I have no idea. She did say you don't have to craft. You could do, like, I might just work on annotating or doing a puzzle, who knows. But I did buy the paint by numbers thing, where I got like a frame that you can create so you can hang it up in your house. So we'll see how that goes. But I need to kind of get ready. That's going to be on soon. And I signed up to be kind of like a guest on one of the lives. So we'll see how it goes. I'm just not very creative. I'm not very crafty. But I thought it sounded like a good idea. Anyways, this is depressing and it's very dark. Oh, I will say one last thing. I do believe she warned of dark content in the beginning, but I think Chloe Walsh needs to be extremely thorough and better about giving trigger warnings, especially with today's climate. I mean, there was so much drama around this book because of the dark content in here. I know like they had to previously like move it in the bookstores away from like where it was kind of a young adult, because this is not young adult subject matter. But there is a scene in here. So there's a couple scenes of like her finding out her sister had gotten pregnant and she kind of had to go get an abortion or whatever. And then there's a scene where she's remembering like what she thinks is a nightmare, but really happened to her, is Mark doing a forced get rid of the baby situation with a device. Like, I don't even know what I can say on YouTube, but it's a hanger, and him forcing that on her. And then afterwards, her bleeding, and then you see the after effects of what happened from that. And that is fucking horrifying. So that's one of my biggest triggers, is like loss of child, that kind of a thing. I wrote literally when I was annotating, this needs to be listed as a specific trigger, because that's not okay just to throw in there when somebody may have been through that, or it's really somebody's big issue, or had a traumatizing event and they read that out of nowhere, not knowing that's in here. That could be really dangerous. So yeah. And then there's a lot of, obviously essay, and there is suicidal thoughts. She is pretty much wants to die at this point. And the only reason she is sticking it out is because of Hugh and her love for him. So ending it on a really depressing note. What a surprise. Okay, so I'm going to get going and I will check back in with you guys once I finish the book. Hey everyone, I am back with my final check-in for releasing 10. And this is going to be a tough one because I really struggled. I sat with this for a day on how I really wanted to rate it. It took me a long time to write my review on Goodreads because this one just was a struggle for me. And I didn't really know where I wanted to rate it. Now, I'll dive into the reasons that I did end up giving this a lower rating. But first, let me kind of wrap up what happens here at the end. I'm not going to dive into every little thing. Honestly, this is a really long book. This is 700 and something pages that I think it's like 730 or 730 pages that I really didn't feel like it needed to be this long for the first part of their story. God, I have so many tangents to go. I just want to rant about a few different things, but this book literally doesn't even, at the end of it, we are not even caught up to Binding 13 in the storyline. So I don't think we needed to do this much of their childhood and backstory. We could have done some flashbacks. We could have done, the first part of that being it, and then getting to what's currently going on at the end of Taming 7, because it's like now I wanted resolution after Taming 7 and we never even got to that part. So that frustrated me. But basically kind of this book is just like Lizzie being a fucking mess, and I understand that she has mental health issues. She struggles with extreme bipolar disorder. She has bad manic phases. She has been, tortured and put through hell by this monster Mark, with, being assaulted as a child and what ended up happening to her sister. But when I sat with it, I'm sorry, it didn't excuse her actions. Like, her actions were just so horrible in all the previous books to Gypsy, and especially when you read Gypsy's book in Taming 7. She is not redeemed to me in any way in this. I empathize with her, and I understand her character a lot more and what drove her, but it doesn't excuse how she treated Gypsy to me, and then eventually how she treats Hugh at the end of this book. So I will say the first half of this book really had me feeling for Lizzie. I was really invested in her and felt horrible about everything that she had to go through. But the last part of this book really flipped it on the head and made me just have really I'm done. I don't even think Lizzie deserves to be with Hugh. Hugh was amazing in this book. I never really loved him in the previous books. He was just kind of meh to me. But with how devoted he was to Lizzie, how he stood by her side, how he was the only person in her life that truly loved her and fought for her and tried to protect her and was her champion and always there for her in her depressed states where she almost kills herself in bad situations with her cutting. I mean, this poor kid. I mean, they're fucking kids in this. Dealt with so fucking much, and it just wasn't fair to him. I don't really think that Lizzie ever truly appreciated everything that he did for her. So anyways, what kind of happens at the end in this book is, they are in their relationship, they're together, and she is which they did explain with her early onset, bipolar disorder for younger kids. When they hit puberty, she had her period at a really young age. She would get over sexualized type of feelings. And so one of the things that I did not like about this was she was constantly hounding Q to have sex with her. And I did not like that. Like they were like literally like 14, 15, and he just kept saying, "Hey, let's wait till you're 16." And she was just constantly pressuring him. And I just didn't love that. So that's like a lot of this book and a lot of her mental issues and manic phases. And we get to a point where she basically stops taking her medication and she goes in such an extreme manic phase that she's out of control. And she's like cutting and all of these things. She has another interaction with Mark at one point because he comes back and assaults her again and threatens her again. And, you know, it kind of leads her in a bad place. But he was very concerned for her, wants her to get back on the medication, talks to her parents, and she's like, "You betrayed me," and acting all crazy. And her whole thing is like, "This is who I really am. You obviously don't love who I really am." And he's just, I mean, this poor guy like has to deal with this out of control behavior. And she continues to hate Gipsy and blame Gipsy for everything. And I don't know if I brought that up in the previous clip, but the fact that she overheard her sister arguing and screaming with Mark, and she knew that Gipsy was also raped by him, and yet at the end of Taming 7 she calls him a liar and is still blaming him and hates him. How is that okay? Now, I tried to be empathetic and understand from her point of view of like being groomed by Mark, being threatened by him, of him like drilling on her head. It was Gipsy. But it just didn't, I just couldn't understand how she could treat Gipsy so bad. I understand she like is expecting him to save her and help her and speak out, but it's like he was being assaulted as well. He was just a kid. How would he feel safe enough to say anything? Especially in Taming 7, you learn that he actually tried to speak to her older sister and expose it, and she didn't listen to him at his disclosing of his assault. So why would he ever feel safe to speak out on that again? So anyways, I have a lot of issues. I have a lot of issues with this one. I'm pretty angry about it. It was such a depressing read because it's just repeated essay, self-harm, manic phases, and all this kind of stuff, which leads us into a really bad situation at the end of this book. And that is where like she's refusing to get medicated, and Hugh's like pissed off at her, and he's like, "Well, you can't come to my party then. Like, if you're not gonna be, I want my girlfriend, I want Lizzie back, not this." And so he bans her from his party, and she literally shows up drunk, manic, and goes to his room, and one of his teammates is in there, and she has sex with him on his bed, Hugh's bed, Hugh's teammate, and screws him. And I don't care that she was in a manic phase. I don't care that she was drunk. It was wrong. And what made it worse, it wasn't a one-time thing that devastated Hugh. But she's like so nonchalant about it, of like, okay, well, you wouldn't have sex with me, so I had sex, solved our issues. Like, some of her lines in this are so fucking brutal. Like, I can't stand Lizzie. Like, I don't have empathy with her after the cheating. I don't like cheating in romance, and this was really bad because after the first time of cheating, she continues to screw that teammate, like flaunts it in his face and keeps hooking up with him. And then when he breaks up with her and then tries to like talk to her on other occasions, she manipulates him and tries to use his like to give him a blowjob or jerk him off and use sex to try and get him back. And it's just so manipulative and wrong. And so that's when I took the turn, like where I couldn't really forgive Lizzie for anything anymore. Like, because this poor kid already went through hell, and she's like screwing his teammate and like hating his best friend and just being a horrible human being. So she ends up having to go be at the hospital because she's in such a bad phase, because she actually like gets in a fight with her mom, and her mom has like, I think she had a heart attack or almost, because her mom is constantly suffering from cancer. And so she ends up going to get hospitalized, and he meets Katie, which, if you remember, like in Binding 13 Keeping 13, he's been with Katie. He hasn't been with Lizzie that whole time. So and she comes back and she lets him know, like, I know you've met somebody new and I just want you to be happy. That's all I want. I know we can't go back. And so that was good, but honestly, like, that's where it ended. So now we're not even caught up to Binding 13 yet. I'm guessing we're going to pick up after the Taming 7 book and the next book, but it's like, I don't really think I want Hugh to be with Lizzie, because he would have to deal with this the rest of his life. And that's really hard. And they have such a toxic relationship because Liz is just so out of control. And it's just really tough. Like, I have a lot of compassion for people that suffer from bipolar and their loved ones, because I think Chloe does a good job of showing that in these books. Like with Joey and Saving Six and Redeeming Six, you get to see the horror of being a drug addict, but also being the loved one of a drug addict and what that does to you. And I think this really shows that with like mental health, of like the struggle that your loved one has to deal with because you refuse to stay on your medication and do treatment. Like, she's been going to therapy for years, but she refuses to talk to the therapist. So how are we supposed to get anywhere? I mean, she's just a very difficult character. And her cheating on him and then continuing to screw the guy just really churned me. And all my feelings already about how she's treated one of the sweetest guys in the crew, which is Gipsy, made me just very angry. And so I'm angry about her, and I have a lot of things that I don't like about the book. I think it's still fantastic writing. I think Chloe still writes very emotional, character-driven books. This just wasn't for me. Like, this depressed me. I read this in a day, actually, because I kept going with it. And I was just defeated afterwards. It was not an enjoyable time, which, I mean, none of these really are like this feel-good things, but in those, I cried. I didn't cry once in this. And she has the most trauma out of any of the characters. And like, I wasn't as connected to her character as with Joey. I literally cried about Joey in every single book. So I don't know. I just didn't really connect to it as much. Now, these are all like basically 6-star reads. And then Taming 7, I think I gave a 4-star because I didn't think Gipsy got the full story he deserved. It was the shortest book out of all of them. And he only got 1 book, while we're spending this much and 2 books on Lizzie, who's a fucking monster to me. Well, I guess she's not a monster. The monster is Mark in this, and I just hope they all torture him and kill him. If this was a dark mafia romance, we could get a good torture killing on, because this Mark guy needs to die violently. But in this, the other thing I had an issue with was how, of course, that forced abortion, getting rid of the baby. That one I didn't think needed to be on page and needed to be in there and needed to be so graphic. I didn't think we needed so much of the essay scenes, but I do get what she was trying to do and show the trauma and like horror of that. So I don't hate on that. I do think that she threw way too much trauma onto one character, though. Like, it was just like, let's throw a dart at every single trauma we can and put it onto one character to make you feel bad for her and absolve her from her actions in the previous books. And it just doesn't do that for me, especially when I realized that she cheated on Hugh, who was like literally top book boyfriend material for her. I mean, what other guy was willing to suffer through her mental health issues? Hugh did. From the time they were little kids, he was there for her. Anyways, so I struggle with how to rate this. I was going to give it a 4-star because I still really love the writing and whatever. But as I was writing my review, I realized there were so many things I didn't like and so many issues I had that I had to give it a low rating. So I ended up sitting with a 3-star in this, which is kind of shocking when I've loved all the other books. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. So, anyway, sorry to end this on such a downer note, but I have to keep it real on how I really felt about this. I still really think Chloe Walsh is a fantastic storyteller, a fantastic author. I just think this was just a little too heavy. These are already heavy enough. This is just a lot. So, and I think she really needs to list out all the trigger warnings in detail at the beginning of her book. Because even knowing, like, she does mention, like, essay, I think, at the beginning, but there's no mention of that forced getting rid of the baby situation. So, yeah, it just says, please, the topics revolving around childhood abuse, sexual trauma, and suicide. That's literally all she mentions. Like, I think that it needs to be more clear, but that's kind of where we're at. So anyways, don't know how I feel about this. Don't know if I really even want to read the next book. I probably will to finish it out, but I just don't really like Lizzie. And I know a lot of people really loved her after this book and told me, oh, you're going to feel so much for her after you read Releasing 10. And I get where they're coming from with all the shit she went through. I just don't think it absolves her of all her actions. Like, I'm sorry, but you don't have to be a vindictive bitch. You don't have to cheat on your boyfriend multiple times with his friend. That's just cruel. So anyways, I'm going to end this here because I've already been talking for like over 15 minutes about this last part. But thank you so much for watching this. Let me know what you thought of Releasing 10. I'm sorry if you enjoyed it. I understand. I do see the merits of why people liked it. I know some people were giving this 6 stars as well. It just didn't hold up to these for me. Anyways, thank you for watching. Hit that subscribe button, leave me a like, and comment down below. And I will see you guys on the next vlog.